The comments and statements made within the show are the opinions of the commentators and their guests, have not been evaluated by the FDA, and are in no way attempt to diagnose, treat, mitigate, cure, or prevent any disease or illness. The contents of this show are not to be construed as medical advice. If you have a health condition or health concern, please contact a licensed, qualified healthcare practitioner.
Hi everyone, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom, and this is a Supplement Super Sleuth.
That'll be me, and the Herbal Storyteller.
And that definitely would be me. And together, we're going to take a peek behind the curtain of the natural products industry.
We'll be sharing naturals in the news, dispelling lots of myths, interviewing key players in the industry, and highlighting our favorite herbs and supplements.
So with that, let's pull back that curtain and see what's there.
And away.
Hey, Tom. And away we go.
Good morning.
How are you?
I'm good. That looks like Houston. We have liftoff.
Yeah, and my dogs have liftoff too.
I know.
I hit record, and there they are, barking their heads off. Okay.
Yeah, well, that's par for the course.
Yeah,
They've always had good timing now.
Definitely. Couldn't be better. Anyway,
Boy,
so let's just, we have a great show
today.
today. I'm really excited about today's podcast. And this is our 10th show. I cannot believe it. I was thinking about this the other day, and I thought, how did we even do one show, let alone 10?
Right. And how have we made it to 10 without a meltdown?
I know. But we have a really special guest today that I'm really excited to have. Longtime friend of yours, colleague of mine for sure. I can't wait to have him on. And then today we do our regular old naturals in the news, naturals in the know, and then last but not least,
our favorite things.
A few of our favorite things. Really
Absolutely.
Perfect. So, okay, so starting right away, we'll start with the news.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and lots of stuff in the news.
Always.
I'm gonna let you go first.
You want? Okay, thank you. Ladies first. So, headline: Oils from microalgae could replace palm oil in food production. So when I saw this, I was very excited about this, and published March 21st, 2022, in physics.org. A Singapore-based research group has developed a method to extract oils from microalgae that contain more favorable properties than palm oil, a finding that presents a greener alternative for one of the major forces driving deforestation worldwide. So palm oil, gosh, it's everywhere and in everything. And, there's the orangutans that are losing their forests. There's
Sumatran tigers.
Oh my God,
sun bears,
massive deforestation going on for palm oil, which is used worldwide in massive amounts. So wouldn't it be great to have an alternative? And microalgae, easy to grow, easy to harvest. I don't know how hard it is to extract, but I'm definitely going to look into it more. But great headline, very promising.
Yeah, and then there's one that I'll share, but just real briefly here, because a lot of people know about folate, a form of B vitamin, and low folate levels have now been associated with dementia, with increased dementia and mortality in elderly populations. So this was from a group called Medical News. And Medical News Today, and it was done on March the 21st of this year, so very recent, and data from a new study involving more than 27,000 subjects, ranging from the ages of 60 to 75 years old. So that's 27,000 people at 60 to 75 years old, and it's been identified that if they had lower serum levels of folate, they had a higher risk of cognitive decline and dementia. So it's really a good thing to do to not only get your folate levels checked when you go see your doctor. You go for a checkup, you go see your doctor, hey, can you check my folate levels? And also what you want to find out is whether or not your body, it's what's called methylates, if it methylates that folate appropriately so that you can actually utilize it in your body. And there are some people who don't do very well methylating their folate. They have to take a special form of folate. And so it would be nice, for your ongoing health, especially your dementia, because it's now the number 3 biggest worry that people have as far as aging is dementia. And it's it's something to do that you can help protect some of your cognitive function as you age and go into those senior years gracefully, right? Like I'm doing, right? Exactly. Like I'm.
And as you said in earlier podcasts, the B vitamins, they're water soluble. They go in, they go out. And even if you eat a perfect diet, so we have food issues, food source issues with, concentration of nutrient value, but also, just like you said, what you digest and assimilate is what you get. So as you age, those processes in our bodies start to go into decline. So great point about methylation, Tom. Really great point. Okay, next headline. Use of antibiotics by women in midlife linked to later cognitive decline. Medical Press, again, March 24th, 2022. So this is a really interesting conversation. And these were researchers from General Hospital, Harvard Medical, Harvard Chan School of Public Health, Rush Medical College, Brigham and Women's Hospital right here in my backyard, and Harvard Medical School all found a link between the overuse of antibiotics by middle-aged women and cognitive decline. Now, why would that be happening? Well, in many, many cases, not all cases, but many cases, urinary tract infections become an increase in women as they age. So lots of times first, what I would call knee-jerk reaction of most medical practices. If you have urinary tract infection, you take antibiotics. But the issue becomes, what if there's recurring chronic UTIs? So that's why there's so many antibiotics given to middle-aged and older women. Their urinary tracts become sensitive and other things start to happen, increased inflammation and other issues with a change in their microbiome. And so antibiotics are given and given frequently. And there is a connection with the shift in the microbiome and antibiotic resistance and a change in link with cognition. And that goes into decline. So it may still be early in the science. It may be that the urinary tract chronic infections has some underlying issue that might be contributing to cognitive decline, but the antibiotics kind of get wrapped into the story. But it also may very well be that excessive antibiotic use in middle-aged women could create cognitive decline. But as the conversation continues, Tom, about the worry for seniors, people who are in their middle age and senior ages, around cognition and keeping your mind instead of losing your mind, it's something to think about, to reach out to chiropractors, naturopaths, clinical herbalists, nutritionists, to find other more natural alternative ways or supportive ways to keep your urinary tract healthy as you age, going forward for women and for men.
And absolutely, and as we've seen in lots of past instances, the over application of antibiotics have just a whole panoply of negative effects in the
Absolutely.
environment, negative effects in our own body, and this is just another one showing that, hey, there are other ways to boost your immune system, and that's one of the things I think we're going to talk about a little bit later is the effect that this entire pandemic has had on people and their cognition about what can I do to help my immune system. In fact, I've got a really nice little piece here. Are you ready for me to read
Absolutely.
my
Next headline.
Okay.
Keep it
So
going.
yeah, good. So basically, there's a company. And I got to read the name here. It's called Iprona, Iprona, and they have done a study on black elderberry. Now, black elderberry has been studied before in conjunction with the flu and what can it do within the body as far as protecting the body from the flu, because it's been used traditionally for centuries in Europe and in Asia as a protective, as an immune protective. And so basically what they found is, and the headline reads, black elderberry extract inhibits the replication of SARS CoV2 virus in vitro. Now, in vitro means in glass. So that's a test tube type experiment. That's a Petri dish test tube type experiment. But it's the beginning of the process that leads to human clinical trials to prove concept. So basically, this is what I'm going to read it a little bit because it's easier to do. Even though infection with SARS-CoV-2 induces mild flu-like symptoms, I don't know who they're talking to, but maybe there's mild flu-like symptoms there. A lot of people seem to get some pretty severe ones. Mild flu-like symptoms in the majority of those affected. Some patients develop a very severe form of the disease, including progressive pneumonia due to an overreacting immune system. So therapeutic options for patients with moderate to severe COVID-19 remain limited, and they escape variants that are coming out now represent an additional threat. So a new study, which is published by researchers at the University of Erlangen, has shown black elderberry extract has a strong antiviral effect against SARS-CoV-2. And this company, Iprona, has an international patent that they filed because of what they found out in these studies for their product called Eldercraft, and it's an extract. So basically what they did is they found that it was able to inhibit the replication of the virus in the body, and also the replication of the variants of concern like alpha, beta, and so on at low concentrations. So it doesn't take much of the elderberry to be able to help with these things. Now the scientific studies build on centuries of use of black elderberry, which is Sambucus nigra, that's the Latin name, to treat flu and flu-like symptoms. And in recent years, several human studies have confirmed the efficacy of black elderberry by showing a significant reduction in the duration and the intensity of symptoms during influenza season and influenza infections. So this is one of those amazing herbs, beautiful, beautiful black, shiny, beautiful fruit.
Yeah, definitely beautiful.
Very tart, but very delicious. And one of those herbs that can be taken to, throughout the season. So we go into that, what we like to call our cold and flu season.
Right.
Elderberry which is extending further and further, just like the tick season we talked about a couple of weeks ago. Elderberry is one of those amazing plant allies, especially as we age. Again, at 73, I fit into that category now. Elderberry is something I take every day because not only does it taste great, but I know it's doing some wonderful things for my immune system.
Right.
So this was a piece of news that I thought was really newsworthy.
It's really great, Tom, because the original studies that were done in Israel demonstrated what we call a mechanism of action. And the beauty of elderberry, and also the trick of elderberry is pre-treatment. You have to take it before it happens, right? Before the exposure happens. Because those mucopolysaccharides, the polysaccharides that are inside of this beautiful fruit, they coat the outside of your cell. So they coat the cell membrane, and the viruses slide off. They aren't able to dock onto those receptor sites. So that's mechanism of action. We absolutely know this scientifically, that's how it works. This is how elderberry works. So you have to take it before you're exposed.
Yeah.
It's not an after effect. Yes. So, but it does very much work that way.
Yeah, and one of the really things that, especially for me, because this is, I travel a lot with the job that I do, is that the most recent human clinical study showed that the extract was able to significantly reduce the duration and the intensity of influenza infections that people pick up on long haul flights.
Yeah.
So this was like air travel, and where you're exposed to that stuff. So
Definitely.
if you're taking some some elderberry before and during your travels, this is a really good. That's that ounce of prevention that we were just talking about. Yeah.
Great. All right, I think that's all we have for the news today, huh, Tom?
Oh, that's it for the news, and that which is great because I am excited to bring on our guest, Erik Goldman of Holistic Primary Care. And here we got our little jazzy music.
Hi, Erik.
Now, I can picture Erik dancing on from the side.
I think they call this an Ellen now, right? When you're dancing. It's cool. All right,
All right. Well, so you know what?
Hello.
Today is Erik Goldman.
Hi, Erik. Good morning.
Good morning. Great to see you both.
Thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, well, thank you for having me.
You know what? I just want to I want to segue in here and say, Erik, I've known you now because as we were talking earlier, one of the things we're going to talk about is this wonderful magazine that you have
Oh, yeah.
created over 20 years ago. And I realized that I met you back when you were first starting it. You came to a booth at one of the trade shows that we do and introduced me to your magazine, and I was instantly riveted by it. And that was 20 something years ago.
Yeah.
So we go back a while, and I'm going to let you speak a little bit about that. What is it, and what inspired you to do holistic primary care?
Sure. Well, yeah. So, holistic primary care. Here's another copy for you to see. Well, it actually has an article about antibiotics, which we'll talk about in a second.
Excellent.
So, yeah, the idea for it was something I had back, believe it or not, in the mid 1980s when I first got out of college. Now, I had my parents wanted me to be a doctor. Because, nice Jewish boy. What else is he going to be? He's going to be a doctor. So,
Right. Well, you're a doctor. I don't know.
I'm a doctor. But I knew kind of like by organic chemistry that I'm like, yeah, I'm not sure I want to do this. I'm not becoming a doctor. So by the end of senior year, I kind of had this wake up moment of like, dude, you're leaving college in about a month. You're going to need to make a living to support your, music projects and whatever else you think you're going to be like doing in life. So what are you going to do to actually make money? So I thought to myself, well, gee, what am I actually good at? What would people maybe pay me to do? And I'd always done well in writing projects, and I'd started on this pre-med track. I actually double majored in philosophy and biology. So I had this kind of humanities meets science kind of background. And so I said, all right, let me go into medical journalism, medical writing, science writing, something along those lines. And I got a job at this publication called the Dermatology News, which was a drug company sponsored publication for dermatologists. And that introduced me into this whole world of medical journalism and medical education, postgraduate medical education. And so I started there, and this was the mid to late 80s. And part of my job was to go to medical conferences. And, so from Derm News, I went to a company called International Medical News Group, which did a whole bunch of different specialty focused medical newspapers. And so I was covering cardiology and gastroenterology and psychiatry. Like every week it was a different meeting. But the common thread that I saw at all these conferences was it was all about pharmaceuticals and in some cases surgery. But the doctors were getting very little information about what seemed to me to be health. They weren't learning about nutrition. Right. They really weren't learning about prevention. They certainly weren't learning about herbal medicine, or if they did, it was always in a negative context.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I had this idea going back to like, the late 80s that like, geez, someone ought to do a publication like the ones I'm working for, but focused on holistic medicine for doctors, because, that's what I was interested in, and that's what a lot of my friends were into, and that's kind of like what I was considering healthcare. And the medical community seemed like, like there was just this huge gap, like they didn't know anything.
Right.
But yet there was this kind of quote alternative medicine movement. I'm sure you guys remember that,
Yes.
But there wasn't a lot of media about it, and a lot of the mainstream media, of course, was negative.
Right.
Quackery. This is all quackery.
Right.
That's right.
But I thought, no, it's not quackery. There's a lot of wisdom in this. And what if we did a publication that was formatted like things doctors are used to seeing, but with different kind of content? And at the time, this now takes us into the mid 90s. This idea just kept like knocking at the back of my head. And I didn't think of myself as a business person. I just thought someone ought to do this, somebody out there should do this. And Meg Sinclair, who
Yes.
at the time we were living together, and she was like, this is a really good idea. I think we ought to do this. I'm like, what do you mean we ought to do this? She's like, well, we ought to do this. Come on. Like, there's no healthcare in America. We can really influence, healthcare. Let's do it. She has very good business skills, and she's kind of a visionary, and she's also a Sagittarian. So her, when she gets a notion, it's like, this should have been done yesterday. How come it's not done? Like, let's just go.
Right.
And I'm a Cancerian, so I'm a little more slow moving than that. But so like between us, we find like a pretty good pace. And so the short of it was now we're at like 1998, 1999, and you've got David Eisenberg at Harvard doing conferences for doctors about, well, what they were calling CAM, complementary and alternative medicine at the time. Yep. And suddenly you had a lot of major medical centers opening up integrative clinics and whatnot. And so there was a lot of action in some of the, you had DSHEA was passed in 94. So the supplement companies were suddenly emerging, and some of them got pretty big pretty fast, and some of the drug companies were getting into supplement lines and all. Yeah. So it just seemed like this is really the right time to launch. So we just started flapping our wings and we jumped, and we launched in October of 2000. Flash forward 22 years later.
It's crazy, isn't
forward it? Almost 22 years. Right. You jumped off the cliff and built your parachute on the way down.
Exactly. Yeah. And it still feels like that, like kind of assembling the plane as we're flying it.
And Erik, it's interesting because I remember when things started emerging, it was called alternative health. Now it's called complementary, because there really has been a weaving together of these two different concepts in America. Certainly it's much more a part of the culture in Canada. I mean, the naturopathic colleges are very strong up there, and herbalism and healthcare, like taking care of yourself, is a national pastime in Canada, and we're just coming along. I think on the coasts we have, especially in the West Coast, we see a lot of, preventative, everyday healthcare, and the country's coming along. I think now more than ever. I think the pandemic pushed us over. I think you would agree with that. It opened people's minds and eyes to, we need to take care of ourselves too, not just walk to the doctor and say, what's wrong with me? Fix it. We have to have some self-agency relative to our own health.
Even more than that, not what's wrong with it, fix it. It's just what's wrong with it. Give me a pill. I don't want to change my life. I just want to take a pill and everything will be fine.
Right.
And so, Erik, I know that the way the format of the magazine and everything, it's also designed to be left out in the clinic waiting rooms, right?
Yeah, and we know that clinicians do that. We do occasionally get calls from people who said, hey, I saw this magazine in my doctor's office and I'd like to get a subscription. Can I do that? Because, we really, the content is kind of focused for practitioners, but we write it in a kind of a lively, feature-oriented style. So it's certainly accessible to people who are not medically trained, and we want people to see it that way. So we encourage that, and we're happy when doctors leave it in the waiting rooms and patients can see it. It's kind of like a little sign that says, yes, patient, you can speak to me about the herbs and the supplements you're taking, and I'm not going to laugh at you. I'm not going to tell you you're wrong.
Which is right. That's an amazing gift to people, because I know a lot of people go into their doctor's office and they won't tell their physician I'm taking supplements because they don't want to get laughed at. And yet when you look at the statistics, it's like I think it's 86% of the population now takes some form of supplement.
Yeah.
And to your point, Nancy, about the mainstreaming of a lot of this, a lot of doctors take supplements, and they're it's not, there's a lot of things that used to be called alternative that are now just basically part of mainstream healthcare. I'd like to think we've had some hand in influencing that, but certainly, I remember a time like when we started holistic primary care, the conventional view was that there's no such thing as gluten intolerance. Celiac disease is this very rare thing that you might see once or twice in your career, but all these people that are talking about food allergies and whatnot, that's all just, quote, psychosomatic. That's how they dismissed it. And and now, you've got even the most mainstream institutions like Mayo are putting out advisories about how common gluten intolerance is and all this stuff. And, another example is fish oils, probiotics. There's plenty of examples of things.
It's crazy.
Vitamin A,
even primary care physicians now will test for vitamin D levels, and they recommend vitamin D as part of their natural practice.
So that whole thing of like alternative over here and mainstream over there, that really has broken down a lot, not as much as I'd like to see. And just, but in terms of the lingo, the terminology. So yes, you have that term complementary, you have alternative and integrative and functional. And we deliberately chose holistic for the name of our publication because that word actually means something about the worldview rather than the positioning in relation to mainstream medicine. So anything can be used holistically. You know what I mean? It's not about a particular modality. It's not about whether or not it's done at a hospital. It's really a worldview.
It is.
On how you look at health and illness versus, I think the terms complementary and alternative, that really has to do with the politics of medicine and the economics of medicine more than the actual medicine. And we really wanted to just stay outside that fray,
Yeah.
So
and it's the publication. I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt you, Eric, but it just occurs to me the publication is so great because it exposes practitioners who are hungry for this kind of knowledge. I mean, Nan can speak to that. I can speak to that. I know you can speak to that. There are doctors out there that are very hungry for this kind of knowledge, and it gives it to them, like you say, in a very approachable way. So, because honestly and truthfully, many doctors that I've talked to, they're a little bit daunted by the idea of herbal medicine and what's going on with it. So to put it into an approachable form is really amazing. Now, I'm just curious, really and truly, how many practitioners subscribe to your publication now? What's your audience base?
Yeah. Well, we mail the print to about 60,000 offices, somewhere in that ballpark.
Wow.
And part of our secret sauce is that from the get-go, from the very beginning, we worked with what in the business we call a controlled circulation model, which basically means we decide who we're going to send it to. So early on, we basically purchased a list of primary care doctors. I think it was either like under age 60 or under age 55. I forget what the cutoff was. And we just started sending it to them. It's kind of like the drip the water on the rock theory that eventually, if we just keep sending this out there, those docs, even the mainstream ones, and we were going to like mainstream family docs, general internists, OBGYNs, we wanted to get it to the people who weren't subscribing to alternative therapies in health and medicine or some of the other journals that are out there. Because, if you wait till they get interested enough to actually pay for a subscription for something like that, we're going to be waiting for a really long time. And, this revolution needed to happen. So we just thought if we could put out really good quality, interesting content that's focused on patient care, and we keep sending it out there, eventually those mainstreamers are going to see something in there and they're going to go like, oh, wow, yeah, I just had a patient the other day ask me about elderberry, and now here's an article in Holistic Primary Care about elderberry. I guess I should read this. And I think, so it was a long-term strategy, and I think it has paid off. And I do want to say something about elderberry. That was a great headline that you
Thank you.
That you cited there. The challenge with elderberry and with a lot of herbs is that a lot of the stuff that's coming into market now is adulterated, especially since the pandemic. We just did a webinar with the American Botanical Council and Alchemist Labs about botanical quality assurance. And it's kind of scary because there's such a surge in interest in elderberry.
Oh, yeah.
And somebody's done a study. It hasn't come out yet, but this is going to drop sometime in the next few weeks to months. They bought off-the-shelf stuff on Amazon, e-commerce. They bought like a whole big bunch of products. They claimed to be elderberry, and then they tested them. And only 3 out of 10 had the legit amounts of elderberry in the products. And a lot of them are cut with other stuff, including, surprisingly, purple carrot. Because I guess the color of the extract of purple carrot looks enough like
those gummies are classic for that purple carrot adulteration. It makes me crazy, Eric.
Yeah. So you really got to be careful what you're buying. And,
oh God, I'm so glad you said this.
Yeah, and whenever there's shortages, which there, you've got all these supply chain issues because of, first the pandemic and now the war in Ukraine and everything.
Exactly.
There's a lot of supply chain disruptions, which means that certain ingredients become short supply, which means there's a lot of incentive for suppliers to cut, to put in stuff that looks like the actual herb that you want, but actually isn't it.
Yeah.
And,
I'm so glad you brought this up because on my client base, I'm very particular about which products, which companies. I vet all the companies. I ask for their third-party laboratory studies, batch by batch. I'm anal retentive about this. And I have clients who will say to me, can I go to Amazon for this price. I think I can get it for half the price. And I literally want to tear my hair out because they don't understand. This is such an issue, Eric. Like
It's
the
huge.
Ukraine, it's huge. The Ukraine are huge farming. The entire country is, and a good portion of the European CBD and hemp comes out of the Ukraine. So this is really a big issue. And I don't think people really get it. I'm so glad you brought it up. I really am.
It's an important one.
Very important.
Yeah, along with that, I mean, if you couple that with this whole pandemic and the whole COVID thing, especially long COVID. Now, I'm curious, have you been having a lot of practitioners ask you, hey, can we get some information on, alternative methods to deal with this long COVID issue?
Yeah, sure thing. Yes, the answer is absolutely yes. There's a lot of interest in long COVID. There's a lot of information that's come out, and I know the Institute for Functional Medicine has done a great job of aggregating best practices and what their clinical community is doing. Some of the other organizations, I'm sure AANP, the Association of Naturopathic Physicians, has a lot of resources on that. We've done a bunch of coverage on it. It's a big issue. It's not going away, even if we get to the point where we've truly got herd immunity and the acute COVID doesn't seem to be as much of a threat. The long-term implications of this will linger. I mean, there's no question this is a big deal. And you mentioned cognitive function earlier. That's one of the sequelae of long COVID. Many people have brain fog during the COVID illness itself, which persists long after. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dale Bredesen, but he's a neurologist out at UCLA, formerly at UCLA. I think he's independent now. And he's done a lot of work basically reversing Alzheimer's disease. And his work has kind of forced a complete rethink on what cognitive decline is and what Alzheimer's is. And the good news is it's reversible. However, it does require major lifestyle changes and nutritional interventions and whatnot. But anyway, he's very concerned that this viral, sort of post-viral syndrome is going to drive an already bad epidemic of cognitive decline even further in more people at earlier ages. So the notion that we have to take care of our cognitive health is a really, really big one.
Big, absolutely.
Yeah. And again, with 60,000 subscriptions, I mean, that's a lot of practitioners getting some really great information.
Yeah.
So you mentioned you started podcasts. How's that going for you?
Yeah, well, we do a lot of webinars. It's going well. We a lot of these are sponsored by supplement companies or ingredient suppliers that are producing innovative stuff. And so we tend to make them kind of clinically focused, like what do doctors need to know about, like for example, we've done a lot of stuff on probiotics and, back to this antibiotic thing. So this article here, it says the antibiotic iceberg is a titanic healthcare threat. So that was based on a webinar we did with Martin Blazer, who was one of the very first researchers to talk about the microbiome. I mean, he was on this back in the 70s, the 80s.
Yeah.
And so that was really, really interesting. And to your point about the UTIs and women being treated with antibiotics and then having all these long-term adverse consequences, he and his team have been researching that. He's out at Rutgers University now here in New Jersey, and they've been researching that kind of stuff for a long time. And when people go on antibiotics, particularly multiple prolonged courses over the course of their lives, there's huge microbiome disruption, which leads to gastrointestinal problems. It can lead to cognitive problems. It can lead to respiratory problems. So this thing about antibiotics is a really, really, really big deal. And the freaky part is that, like, the vast majority of antibiotics that worldwide, the vast majority of antibiotics used are not used by people. They're used in agriculture for animals.
Right.
And here's an interesting fact about antibiotics. Their use in agriculture is, or I should say livestock agriculture.
Livestock.
It's not necessarily about protecting the animals from diseases. It's about fattening them because very shortly after antibiotics came on the scene in the, I guess, the 40s and the 50s, after World War II, farmers realized that when they treated animals for diseases with antibiotics, the animals gained weight.
Gained weight.
Yeah.
Especially cattle
Yeah.
and pigs. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and it's across the board. It's throughout. And Blazer says that that's like across the entire animal kingdom. So pigs, chickens, you name it. If you give them antibiotics, they'll gain weight. So factor that into our current obesity, diabetes pandemic. I mean, I'm not saying antibiotics cause obesity,
right.
but they may be influencing this, and that's something that people need to know about. So it's not that we should never use antibiotics, but we need to be a lot more judicious about how we're using them and for what, and realize that, they're not consequence free, especially when used on a mass scale.
Just like the whole NSAID, just like NSAIDs,
Right.
they have a specific use, but if they're overused, they can cause erosion in the gut. They can cause all kinds of things.
And the liver issues, kidney issues. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So back to the question about podcasts and webinars. So that's the kind of stuff that we do, and it's a lot of fun because we get to interview some really, really interesting people doing cool stuff. Yeah. We just had one with, do you know Chris Shade from Quicksilver Scientific?
Yeah.
We just did one with him about non-prescription female hormone balancing, which was really, really great. And so we have a whole archive of those. You can see them on our website if you go to holisticprimarycare.net, and it's totally accessible to general public as well as physicians.
Perfect.
So.
That's absolutely
That's
fantastic.
so great.
Now, and you had mentioned earlier that you get people calling in from the physician's office saying, "Hey, I saw your magazine in my doctor's office. Can I get a subscription?" Are they able to get a subscription?
Yeah, sure. We do sell paid subscriptions. If you go to our website, you'll see a subscribe button somewhere on there, and you just click on that and it'll take you to information about how to access us. We do have a free email newsletter that goes out once a month. It's called Upshots, and you can enroll in that for free. You just click on the subscribe button for that, and you'll get us in your inbox once a month, and you get some of the headlines that we're covering and whatnot. So yeah, we want it to be accessible. So
That's so great. Cool. Eric, thank you so much.
And
Anything
where
else?
Where are you taking holistic primary care from here?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. We've been, Meg and I have been talking about how do we grow it more into kind of a non-practitioner audience. How do we grow it into other practitioner niches? I mean, we've been very primary care focused, but we know that there's other niches out there of practitioners that we would like to serve. That we can figure out how to make that all work. We do surveys. In fact, we've been surveying our readership, and this year we're collaborating with a group called Trust Transparency Center. They're industry vets who do a lot of work in the regulatory compliance space and all. So we're collaborating with them to get insight on how practitioners are engaged with supplements, and particularly how the pandemic has affected their practices. And the cool thing about this collaboration is that they also do a consumer survey where they survey, I think it's like thousands and thousands of American consumers. And so we'll be able to kind of cross-tab how consumers are interacting with supplements and how practitioners are interacting, and see where the overlaps are and where the gaps are, so we can maybe identify some niches that aren't well served yet, and see where it goes from there. So we're doing a little bit more collaboration with other organizations, and we grow very organically. Like where we see needs, we try and grow into it.
It's so fabulous.
And it's done, and you've done very well at it. So congratulations.
Well,
thanks
I
much.
I'm so impressed. And Eric, as always, it's amazing. We haven't seen each other in 2 years because of this crazy pandemic. Because normally we see each other at a lot of different trade shows. And so it's great to be able to actually see you face to face.
For sure.
And thank you so much for giving us your time and getting up early. As people probably can hear in the background, there's a lot of New York traffic going on behind you.
Yeah.
And I think that's wonderful. Thank you.
And thank you so much for continuing to be an incredible resource for people who are interested in alternative health and wellness. And I'll make sure people in my practice are using or utilizing your resources. So, and we'll just keep the chain going, Eric. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you
And
so
that
much,
was, Eric,
Nancy.
that was holisticprimarycare.net.
Yeah.
Holisticprimarycare.net. Yeah,
Primarycare.net.
it's right there at the top there.
Right on.
Very good.
little plug there, little plug.
Oh, no, absolutely. It's important
And I
to share.
love plugging somebody who's so wonderfully reputable as you. So thank you again.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you for
Well,
everything.
thanks a lot. Thanks for having us. I do appreciate it. And yeah, look forward to seeing the broadcast.
And say hello to Meg.
Yes,
will
please
do.
do.
Thanks.
All right, have a
Take
great
care.
day, Eric.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay,
All right.
bye.
Well,
Okay, Tom, that was fantastic. I know.
that was.
He's
Eric is just a
doing
stellar human
great
being.
work in the world, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, what an inspiration to go from being a doctor to educating doctors.
I know, the doctor's doctor, right?
Yeah,
The source for
exactly.
the doctors. Love it. Totally
Well,
love
you know
it.
what? Mother's Day is almost around the corner
Yes,
here,
it
isn't
is.
And I know these are going to probably this broadcast is probably going to air in the month of May, which is Women's Month. So, I think that's what we're going to do for our favorite things, right? Don't
Yes.
we have things for women for our
Yes,
favorite
we
things?
absolutely do. We
And
absolutely
where's
have a
cue the music? Where's our music? Yes. So I really, Nan, uh, in every herbal tradition, there are standout herbs, that literally are used for specific purposes, and often, sometimes they'll be just used for men, sometimes just used for women, and this is because herbs can and do have specificity for certain systems in our bodies, and obviously there are certain systems that men and women share, and other times there are systems that we definitely don't share, and so, herbal traditions date back literally thousands and thousands of years. And science is only now catching up. I mean, it used to be poo-poo. Now they're looking at all sorts of plants, trying to break it down into that, scientific, that beautiful one compound. But so many plants have so many beautiful combinations of compounds that give them the pizzazz that they have. So for my favorite thing for this month, it's one of those really special herbs, okay? And it's extremely venerated in Ayurvedic medicine as literally as the penultimate women's herb. So since May is Women's Month, I really thought I'd love to, mention my favorite Ayurvedic herb. And this is one of the maybe three or four absolutely beloved Ayurvedic herbs. It's called Shatavari. And scientifically, it's known as Asparagus racemosus, which is a wild form of asparagus. And they use the root of the plant. So there are many different translations for the name Shatavari. And one of them is because shat, the S-H-A-T, literally means 100. So one of them is it's the cure of 100 diseases. That's how venerated it was in Ayurvedic traditional herbal medicine. Another one is that it is called 100 roots, because if you were to dig it up carefully and look at it, it's just this huge bundle of these big, fat, juicy looking roots. And then there's another name that we're going to talk about in a little bit called that means 100 husbands. And there's a reason for that, and we'll get to it in a little bit. But, as the name suggests, it's a member of the asparagus family. So it's the same kind of asparagus that we'll grill on the barbecue or that we'll steam for dinner. It's just a wild version. And, it's considered to be what's called an adaptogenic herb. So, we've talked about adaptogens before. Adaptogens are those types of herbs that help to maintain a balanced state within our body. And with that, we're better able to adapt to the rigors and to the stresses of normal life. And so that's why they term it an adaptogen. Now, one of the reasons for this, that they're calling Shatavari an adaptogen, is it contains compounds that are strongly antioxidant. And one of the things we know about antioxidants are that they help the body withstand cell damage from other, imbalanced cells that we call free radicals. They're missing an oxygen radical, and they can be very damaging to the body. Antioxidants donate, a molecule to balance that free radical out and keep it in check. So one class of compounds, antioxidant compounds that are found in Shatavari are called saponins. And saponins have this wonderful antimicrobial properties. So they can help guard your body against things like fungi and bacteria and viruses, and they're capable of improving immune function. Because what they do is they stimulate, in this case with Shatavari, they stimulate key components of our immune system called T cells. Those are our big defenders. Some of the big defenders in the body are T cells. And some of the antioxidants found in Shatavari are also anti-inflammatory in nature, because a lot of the T cells can be inflammatory. And what this does is it helps to quell inflammation of other, things that are pro-inflammatory in nature, like COX-2, which we've heard of, COX-2 inflammation and causing joint problems and so on. So in Ayurvedic tradition, and that's based on literally centuries and centuries of healing wisdom that's been passed down very carefully by Ayurvedic practitioners who were known as Vedias. The process of ancient herbalism there was based not only on what they considered to be divinely revealed knowledge, but also, and that happens both in Ayurvedic medicine and traditional Chinese medicine, but it's also a process called empirical observation, empirical knowledge. So it's basically the knowledge of an observed effect. So literally, the empirical knowledge is the very foundation. It's the jumping off point for any and all modern research. They observe an effect, and then the research says, okay, well, let's find out why the effect is there. So one of the things that was observed with Shatavari is that it can have healing and restorative and protective qualities when given to people who were having issues with their health. And one of these was that, we want to consider it to be immunoprotective. So that's one of the main things with Shatavari, is that it has this immunoprotective aspect to it. But just like on that TV commercial, the ShamWow commercial, but wait, there's more. And indeed, there really is a lot more. Shatavari literally has been used to help relieve coughing. It can treat diarrhea. It can be used as a diuretic. It's used to treat ulcers and kidney stones. And beyond that, it's been used to balance blood sugar. Now, in Ayurvedic medicine, something like that is called a rasayana. And that's a restorative tonic. A rasayana means to promote not only health and longevity, but also youthfulness. It brings the body back to what the Ayurvedic practitioners would call the path of essence, or spiritual balance and harmony in the body. So they weren't necessarily looking at individual compounds. They were looking at, what does this herb do in general, especially for the body. And all of that brings us back to why we're looking at this as a favorite herb of the month, because it's especially dedicated to women. It was considered in Ayurveda to be the queen of all of the herbs, especially revered for women's issues. So in conjunction with this, it was thought to be very good for depression, and animal studies kind of prove that out. It's also beneficial for our neurotransmitters, and a lot of which act like antidepressants in our brain. And it's been shown to rejuvenate collagen, which helps your skin to stay firm and youthful looking with that nice youthful glow. It was used to reduce menopausal symptoms, and there are small human studies that show that that's accurate. It was used to help balance women's hormones, and was considered to be an essential herb to support lactation and breastfeeding, because it produces another hormone called prolactin, which is crucial for healthy breastfeeding. So women's health requires nutrients for balance, for energy, for relaxation, and especially for reproductive wellness. And in that category, Shatavari is the leader among all of the other Ayurvedic herbs. So it can be used throughout any phase of women's process, of their life cycle process, from helping to regulate menstrual cycles to increasing female fertility, and even aiding in pregnancy and beyond. So it benefits women, by increasing breast milk production. It nourishes reproductive organs. It strengthens female fertility. And, let's go to that 100 husband thing, just real briefly. Okay. So it's believed that because Shatavari has such an excellent herb to restore healthy endurance and strength and balance in women, that it made them youthful and powerful embodiments of the feminine energy and the dynamism. Not from a sexual thing of like, okay, I can now go out and have 100 husbands, but more that now I am woman. I am woman. This is an herb that has brought me back into my power, my feminine power. And so, just kind of to further illustrate Shatabari's balancing effect, It can also be used by men. So it's another one of those, but wait, there's more. It's used even more interestingly in traditional Chinese medicine. It's also considered to be what's called a yin tonic. Now, the yin has to do with the body's fluids and things not drying up. And that is especially important for women as they age. And in traditional Chinese medicine, Shatavari was called Tianmendong. And it is, even though it's a slightly different species of asparagus, it's very, very similar, and the uses are almost identical. And it's been revered for, again, centuries for restoring that yin essence or the balance of the essential fluids in the body. So, I really, one of my favorite herbs. It's just, I can go on and on. It's very good for men, and especially somebody like me who tends to run a little bit on the dry side. Shatavari is an excellent herb to maintain that fluid balance, so I don't get all cranky and creaky and like that. Now, ever-present words of caution: a normal serving size of Shatavari is about 500 milligrams once or twice a day. It's an herb that really, if you're going to use it, don't just dive into it and try and take a whole bunch. Um, Go find a qualified Ayurvedic or Chinese herbalist and someone who knows how to use this herb, and work with them, because it's an extremely effective herb. But because there are not that many scientific studies and science hasn't validated it so far, um, you want to be careful with it. And some cases people have asparagus allergies, and they certainly wouldn't want to take Shatavari. So, but beyond that, find yourself a good herbalist and really find out why this herb was considered to be the queen of Ayurvedic herbs, especially for women. And I'm going to hand it off to you, Nan.
Tom, I want to hear you say, "I am woman, hear me roar" again. That was fabulous. Okay, one of my favorite herbs in my practice. It's a favorite women's herb. I've used it in my practice many, many, many times. It's viburnum. There's viburnum prunifolium, which is black haw, which is really a Western herb, and more importantly, an American Western herb. And then there's viburnum opulus, which is also known as cramp bark. Cramp bark has been used in traditional Chinese medicine, also in Europe. It's very small shrub, has reddish brown bark, and these beautiful leaves are ovate leaves that kind of have serrated edges on them, and the flowers are beautiful. They're very tiny, creamy white flowers, and they have a flat top, and they kind of open like almost like a platter, if you will. We call that a flat top cluster. And the fruit is blue-black, and it droops, right? It droops down like that. Beautiful, found across the U.S. in woodlands, well-drained soil, usually found from Connecticut to Kansas, and then Alabama to Texas. So a part of our herbal tradition, if you will. If you live in the U.S. and you love the herbs of the U.S., this is definitely black haw is one of our native species. We use the dried stem bark or the root bark. So that bark is peeled off and cleaned and dried and then boiled like a tea, if you will, or as an alcohol tincture. So what does it do, and why do I use it in my practice? Well, it is exquisitely effective in relaxing spasms, especially of the uterus and the lungs. In traditional Chinese medicine, cramp bark is used as it pacifies liver wind. So liver wind might be migraine, spasms that might happen in the sinews, because the liver rules the sinews. So it's really good at reducing spasm, asthmatic coughing spasms or coughing fits. It's been used. It's great for chronic calf cramps. It's one of those herbs that if you, in the middle of the night, you have these, it wakes you out of a dead sleep, and then you have to stand up and stand on your legs, and then your calves feel like the muscles have twisted inside. It's really good for those kinds of cramping issues in the lower lower burner or lower part of the body. It's great for fluid retention, nervous upset, and it balances menstrual flow in women. So as you can probably tell, I use it mostly for women, but I use it across the board for in what I would call antispasmodic formulas. It is so safe as an herb. It's been used for women of childbearing age and who are bearing children. It can be very relaxing, very supportive, helps tone the uterus. Great for muscular tension too, for people who, if they've tried kava and kava was too hot and spicy and it didn't quite work for them, black haw or cramp bark might work. It's beautiful herb, incredibly safe. It's compatible with breastfeeding and pregnancy, which tells you how safe it is. Usually, there's many, many, many herbs that do not fit in that category, but black haw or the viburnum species, absolutely very safe. Normally, our suggested serving, if you're taking it as a tea or a dried bark tea, it's about 2.5 to 5 grams per day. So you just boil a nice cup of tea, drink your tea. It's very mild tasting. And if it's a tincture, it's anywhere from 5 to 10 mils per day. So you can repeat that 2 to 3 times per day, but no more than that. More is not better ever. Even though Americans are like more is better, that's not how it works. A little bit goes a long way. Beautiful herb, beautiful Western herb, great for women who struggle with their menses and have intense menstrual cramps. This is really a boon. So, and that's my favorite things for today. So
Yeah, and the nice thing about that, Nan, is that there are some cramp reducing herbs out there that are also somewhat sedating.
right.
And that's not going to happen with this.
Not
So
with
it's not
black
like
haw.
you're going to, yeah,
You're not,
not going to.
you're not, premenstrual. You're not thinking, okay, I'm going to take this and then I'm just going to have to lie on the couch because I'm just worthless now. That's not how black haw works. It's because it's tonifying, right? It has a tonic kind of feel to it. Even though it's antispasmodic, it's tonic at the same time. So, and it's not heating. Its energy is neutral. It's neither cold nor hot. So it's so safe to use for women on a monthly basis. So as things are getting towards your cycle and you're starting to get ready to have your menstrual flow, if you're starting to feel that your uterus start to cramp, this is just a really simple tea that you can take on a frequent basis. Yeah, beautiful
Absolutely.
herb, beautiful herb.
Wonderful things to talk to women about in the month of women.
Yeah. All right. Well, that does it for us for today on our podcast. We want to thank you so much for joining us. We really enjoy doing these. Tom, you have anything else to say?
Well, I always have something else to say. I am woman, hear me roar. Yeah. Besides that, we have a section that we're working on adding into this that, natural health customers say the craziest things. And so a lot of times people will go into health food stores and they're brand new to it. And this is wonderful. We absolutely encourage you. Be brand new. Have that beginner's mind with supplements and with herbs and learn all of the amazing things they can do. But if you're a store owner or if you work in a health food store like that and you've had a funny interaction with somebody, then definitely we would love to hear about it. We'd love to mention it on the air. We'll mention your store. We won't take any names, but we'll mention it in the store. And, please share it with us. And also, we love to get feedback from our audience. And if you have something that you would really like to hear about, please. Nan and I have been in this industry collectively now for well over 70 years. And we've got a lot of experience. We know, like if you were listening to Erik, boy, the number of people that Erik knows and who he interviews is just amazing because of what he's been doing for as long as he's been doing it. So if you have a question you'd like to know about, let us know.
Yeah, let us know. And please subscribe and like our Facebook page or our Instagram page and share with your friends and family if you find the information here and the interviews that we've been sharing with all of you worthwhile, interesting, fun, and educational. So thank you so much.
Right.
And we hope.
Remember now that herb is Shatavari, not I'm looking for that 100 husband herb.
All right. Thank you so much. And everyone, see you on our next podcast in a couple of weeks.
Absolutely.
Take good care.
Stay well.
Okay, everyone. Until next time, I'm Nan.
And I'm Tom.
And we'll have more great topics and guests in the very near future. So join us right here in 2 weeks as the Supplement Super Sleuth
and the Herbal Storyteller take another deep dive into the fascinating world of the natural products industry.
See you later.